Well, hello, y'all. So I'm excited about this. This is Kevin Feeney. And as you can tell by the title, he wrote this book, which I've called the Fly Agaric or Amanita Muscaria Bible, because, like, honestly, look at it. So I'm going to embarrass you for a minute. So give me a second. So,
Okay.
like, y'all, so when I first found Amanita and I was first doing my research, I didn't just like go on forums and read that. Of course, being with a science background, I went to the science, and there's a lot of research, but there's like top names that you see over and over when you do research. And so I'm seeing these names, Sunoda and the Korean studies, Japanese studies, blah, 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 the Polish studies. And I started seeing this Feeney name coming up, and Feeney was involved in some of the more recent stuff. And I try to get more recent research when I can, build on the old, but follow the new. And so I'm like, dang, this Feeney, man, he's cool. I like his research. I like his work. But in your head, when you're new to a field, you're like, oh, they're gods, up in these halls of research, and they're so intelligent and they're so smart and they're doing what I love. But like you never can reach those people because they're so busy. Anyway, so I go on to use the mushroom, make the channel. I'm doing my thing. I'm doing my work or whatever. And then out of the blue, one of the viewers who became a friend of mine, Neelan, he's like, hey, did you hear about that new book coming out? And I'm like, no. And he's like, the Kevin Feeney. And I'm like, oh, the researcher Feeney. And he's like, yeah. He's like, and he told me what you were doing. And I was like, oh my God, I can't wait. And so I tried to find Kevin online and I couldn't find him. And I think I messaged him somewhere and it turned out not to be him. And I never heard back or anything. And I was like, yeah, he's untouchable. I figured. And like the very next day, he hits me up on Facebook. He's like, my name's Kevin Feeney. I'm over here going, I know who you are. And he's like, hey, my book is blah, blah, blah. And I would really like to send you a copy. I'm like, oh my God, is this real life? So I'm like, sure, bring it over. I'll do a review of it. And like, here he is in the flesh. And I've gotten to now talk to him and like get to understand how he feels about it. And it turns out he's like the book version of what I want my channel to be. So he's like my brother Amanita guy. So y'all, it is your pleasure, trust me, to meet Kevin Feeney.
Well, thank you for having me here. I look forward to chatting a little bit.
Me too. I've got like all your attention. This is cool. Okay, so I told him, y'all, that I was going to ask him different kinds of questions because I've been listening to his other interviews, where he's been talking about the book. And I wanted to, nobody asked the questions I wanted to ask. So I'm going to ask you the questions I want to ask.
All right.
Okay.
And some new ones. This will be good.
First, I want to know, like, what got you into research?
Okay. That's a great question. So, I mean, largely it was psychedelics. And of course, Fly Agaric doesn't quite fit into that category. And we can talk about that a little bit. But it was kind of, as a teenager, similar to lots of teenagers having kind of doldrums or not a great time, wasn't terribly into school and things like that. Not like a bad student or anything, but I just wasn't into it. And after I had my first psychedelic experience as an adolescent, suddenly I was interested in things like botany and biology and psychology and chemistry and all these things. And so something just kind of clicked. A kind of switch went on. Before I was kind of disengaged, and now I had this experience that was really, I mean, it's kind of cliche, but mind blowing, opening doors. And suddenly I found myself kind of engaged with the world in a different way and really wanted to kind of understand what this was about, and how these substances fit into the whole context of the world around us. So I think that's kind of at the heart of my drive, or beginning to have a drive to learn about the world, and to be involved in research. And I feel lucky now to be in a position to do research into things like fly agaric and other things that I find incredibly fascinating.
So why do you find this mushroom fascinating?
So I mean, this is an interesting one, and part of it is, uh, after, as a teenager, discovering some of these substances, reading through some field guides and things like that. And this was a mushroom that stood out. Of course, it's gorgeous, and it's familiar to everybody, usually through fairy tales, or now video games, or other sorts of things. And so to find out, about the properties of this mushroom, and also find out that they are somehow different than the psilocybes that everybody's familiar with. There was a lot of curiosity to find out what that was, and what this mushroom is about. And I also felt that as an adolescent, felt that if I saw this in the woods, or in the park somewhere, that I would be able to identify it. um, and of course, a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that uh, it can't be confused with other mushrooms. Of course it can. But I felt I would have better luck there than with the LBMs, the little brown mushrooms, which take a much closer inspection of morphological features and things like that to identify.
So can I ask, and if you don't want to answer, that's fine, but do you have any one memorable experience with this mushroom that you feel like you could share?
Sure. It's been a while, and most of my experiences have been fairly moderate to mild. It's something that I've been fairly careful with over the years. Of course, when I first kind of found out about them, the information was not good. It was hard to find any useful information about the mushroom, and how it might be used, or what it might do. And this was, the internet was just kind of in its infancy. Um, so one experience, uh, and this is strange because it was both, um, it was both kind of a magnificent and mundane at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course, it's Amanita. Of course it makes sense.
So it's the nobility of contradictions. But it was just kind of this experience of just experiencing this countdown of, I don't remember where it started, but I knew that at the end of the countdown, uh, that was it. That was the end of the world. Everything would just be gone. And so it the countdown went, and then as it just disappeared into nothingness, it was that sort of that uh just that moment of kind of that death rebirth of uh something concluding, and then out of that moment of conclusion, kind of rebirthing, or reawakening. And it was so it and I feel strange calling it both a profound and mundane experience at the same time. um but it was, but it was, I mean, it was a significant and interesting experience, for sure.
That's the one thing about this is anytime anyone tries to talk about it, they're like, there's always this, it was this, but this, and it's always opposites. And I know that
Yeah,
sounds weird, but it's like, no, it doesn't. I understand that that is normal and that is absolutely possible. Plus, we're taught in this society that for something to be fantastic and life changing and profound, it also has to be the experience of it, also had to be some outlandish experience.
right, right.
So, just as an author myself, and me wondering why this book didn't exist, that for all of the time that I was looking for a book like this, my biggest question is, how did you think of this book? What made the idea come together? And when did it stop being an idea but cemented as something you knew you had to do?
So wonderful questions. It came from the similar feeling that you had, that there were all these, books out there about different things, but there was never anything really great available on the fly Agaric. And the information was always so vague and general and of course contradictory. Um, and I just always wanted something that I could sit down and kind of explore the different facets uh, of this mushroom. And so a lot of it was, this was the book that I always wanted, that I wish I had, 20 years ago, 25 years ago. Um, that, I feel like with something like this, I would have been able to start, up here instead of, kind of down here and trying to figure everything out. Um, and I knew that, I'd been interested and researching and investigating this mushroom for a long time. But I knew that I was limited in my own knowledge and my own experiences. And I knew there were other individuals out there with, you know, their own backgrounds and their own experiences that could address certain things that I just wouldn't be able to. So I really wanted this sort of just participation from lots of different people, people with different ideas, to really give a lot of meat and depth to the book. So it just wasn't me trying to um, discover and explore everything, but bringing other people in to share their own research and experiences also.
Then how did you, because most people would not be able to get the caliber of people. Like the people that are in this book are all the leaders in the field. Like these are the top-notch names. How did you get these people?
Um, Maybe a combination of luck and persistence. So some of the articles or some of the chapters were published previously in different journals and magazines, but they'd become obscure, over the years, and finding them and being able to share them with people was really difficult. So one of the things I was interested in was there were, a handful of these articles that I'd read over the years and just said, this is just so fantastic and so, such an important contribution to, the field of understanding Amanita muscaria and fly agaric, that this has to be made available again. So I reached out, to different people that had written some of these articles, and I met some people at conferences and was able to, chat people up and get them interested. So a lot of it was just kind of trying to find people, and occasionally I talk to somebody and they'd say, you know what, you really need to talk to so and so. So then I'd get, an email or phone number, and so a lot of it was kind of that networking and just figuring things out, um, and some of it was just luck, just running across people just at the right time, when they had, interest in doing something like this. So it was kind of I wouldn't say haphazard, I guess, because I was put my nose to the grindstone to reach everybody. And then at some point you've got to stop because the book's 500 pages. So,
And it's crazy because when you sent me this, like, I don't know, I looked at the table of contents. You know how you had those moments in your life? Y'all listen. I'm not talking to you, Kevin. I'm talking to the listeners. Y'all are used to people doing interviews and just faking it and like making up fake things and acting interested. Y'all don't understand. Like, this is everything I've been wanting to ask him. And you can call me a nerd, but I've been nerding out about this. This is every bit like I'm so excited. I'm trying not to interrupt the man while he's speaking to ask him more questions. But one of the cool things that happened to me is all of you know in your life when you've had moments where the blood rushed out of your face and you felt like you were losing pressure because either something horrible had just happened or something so amazing just happened that you don't know where to put it. And you'll always remember that moment when someone brings it up. That's how I felt when I read the table of contents to this book. It was one of those moments. See, I'm getting emotional thinking about it because up until this book, I was the only person I knew of that felt like I wanted the world to get some sense of level-headedness about this mushroom and bring it together, all of it, the lore, the science, the use of it, the medicine of it, and where it grows, and like, why didn't someone do this? And I have felt very alone. And I have wondered where the academic community was in this. Where were the books? Why wasn't this everywhere? Why isn't this a crowded arena to enter? And so when I read your table of contents, I suddenly felt like I finally met someone else on this planet that I understand and that understands me, and that we are doing something here that seems so obvious. And yet, where's everybody else? But hey, we're here. But it blew my mind. And so this book and putting this together the way that you did, it's everything I hope to be. And I will always keep working to be like you on video. And one of the chapters I'm working on right now, this woman, Ava Maciejczyk, I want to meet this woman so bad. She's Polish, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, that woman is so talented. Anyway, I'm working on her chapter on all of the constituents in the mushroom. So if y'all don't want to wait for the video, if you just want to go on and find out exactly everything that's in the mushroom, that's just like one example of what's in this book. But she did a great job. So if you ever speak to her again, tell her she did an amazing job. All of her research is amazing. And what I want to know is you can't be a jack of all trades just like I can't. And so when I look at some of this stuff, what I want to know is what part of this book did you not know going in and then learned the most in dealing with these people and compiling it and doing all, everything you had to do to get it put together. What's the thing that sticks out to you the most that you learned that you didn't know going in, but you know now?
Okay, that's a great question. So I've always, for 20, 25 years, 20 years, been, into, going out and foraging and collecting mushrooms. And I've, got, at least a dozen, edibles that, I'll go and collect. And some years we move around and move to different places, so we can't collect for a few years, but I've been for 20 years collecting. And but so one of the things that originally I was going to co-write with somebody else, or have somebody else write, was the field guide to the North American psychoactive Amanitas. and that was something that kind of fell through. So it fell into my lap, and I just said, there's no way I'm making this book and not having a field guide in it. It won't be complete without the field guide. So I knuckled down, and I got dozens of books and other resources on Amanita, and particularly the psychoactive Amanitas, and kind of really dug into that, and I ended up really enjoying it a lot. And so that was one of the big things, is for me really kind of refining my skills, and being able to identify the different types of psychoactive Amanitas. And of course, I just live in one region of the United States, so a handful of them occur where I am, and a lot of the others are in other parts of the country. So I do hope to maybe visit you down there and pick some Persitina sometime, and get to some other parts of the country to go out and forage some of the other varieties. But so that was something that was a big development for myself, and I feel really good about how it all turned out, and talked to different people and got feedback on it to make sure I was on the right path. And so that ended up being a very rewarding part of this journey.
You did a bang up job too. I wanted to show them. So you know how there's the field guides are just not good. They're not trustworthy about their info, but he included a field guide. This is what the front page of the chapter looks like. But like, he did a great job. He's got photos in it and everything, and it's all about each one, scientific name, everything you should know about it, everything a field guide would give you. So it's basically the psychoactive Amanitas, the ones you all care about the most. They're all in here. So that's cool. You did a great job, man. You really did. If you come down here, we're going to pick Persifrisbees. One of my viewers called them Persifrisbees because they're so big here.
So big.
What were you going to say?
But it was also kind of interesting too, because I was saying earlier, as a teenager, I thought this would be the easiest thing to identify, but you go into any discussion forum online, or any Facebook identification group, and there's always pictures of mushrooms being posted that are not Amanita muscaria, and that's what the individual is looking for. So I thought that was important to give people the tools. And there's some very basic features where you can eliminate mushrooms very quickly based on some just a few features. So I hope that will be helpful for people, and because of course the biggest danger with this mushroom, one of the biggest dangers is improper identification. So
yep, for sure. And there's only a few that, so like the Welsii and panthers, I would think those two get a little bit sketchy. And there's some in Alaska that someone sent me that after they were dried looked like pantherina, and they swore they were muscaria when they picked them. And it's so weird that things can change color like that after you dry them too.
Well, there's in Alaska, so they do have the pantherina, or the American version of pantherina, sometimes called Ameripanthera, does grow up there. But also there is an Amanita regalis, which used to be considered a variety of Muscaria. And that also has a brown cap like the panther. So there is a brown Muscaria. But in North America, you can only find it in Alaska.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So how much did the information change? How long from when you started working on it till when it published?
It was about 3 years.
So did any information change that you had to go back and keep updating or fixing?
No, there wasn't really too many changes. One of the things that was kind of interesting is, well, in the chapter that's called, I think it's called the formula. Yes, the formula.
What chapter?
It's the last chapter.
Oh yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
looks at kind of different preparation techniques, and I really kind of wanted to frame it around sort of traditional practices that we see around the world, and sort of explore it from that angle, as opposed to um, getting into just kind of, straight recipes or things like that. So I wanted to explore things that were based on sort of cultural preparations or historical preparations. Um, but one of the things that was just kind of, so that I didn't really directly address or address in too much depth, was the use of acidic materials in making the tea or the beverage. And so there's one example of, from the book, in Siberia, they mix their infusion or decoction of muscaria with the local variety of blueberries they have. And so part of the conjecture is that, well, the acidity from those blueberries probably contributes to the decarboxylation of the ibotenic acid to muscimol. And so I talk about that a little bit, and talk about the studies that have shown the low pH of below 3-point pH, usually around 2.7 or 2.8, and boiled for a certain amount of period, tends to convert the majority, if not all, of ibotenic acid to muscimol. And so that piece is in there, but I didn't really kind of develop that line too far, or emphasize it too much. And as the book was going to press, there was all this stuff, this kind of flurry of people exchanging recipes about lowering pH on Facebook and different forums, that this thing had already kind of developed a life of its own as a preparation technique. So that was something that kind of caught me off guard a little bit, because it had been kind of in my back pocket, and part of this chapter that was developing, and then all of a sudden it was kind of everywhere. So that was kind of a surprising thing. And it's the information has actually been in the literature for 30 or 40 years. It's just been overlooked, or the significance of it hasn't been recognized until quite recently. So that was kind of an interesting trend to see kind of taking place.
So if y'all want to see any of the old recipes, any of the lore and historical use, that is chapter 29 right there, the formula. And he gets into all the different, yeah, it's good. So many videos to be made. I can't wait to get into it. But yeah, if y'all want to have like a book where you can not wait for me and you can have it all to yourself, that's where that is. So how has the book been received? How's it going?
I think it's been pretty well. We get a little bit of feedback here and there, and we are waiting for some reviews to come out. A number of review copies were sent, but obviously it's a large book, and between people reading the book and writing a review and getting it published, there can be a substantial amount of time. So hoping to see some kind of reviews come out soon, and hear what people say. There's some reviews going up on places like Amazon and things like that, and so there's definitely some positive energy and feedback on it. And I think maybe next fall, when it's Muscaria season again,
that's when it's gonna go nuts.
Yeah, so then I'll be interested to see kind of where things go.
So is there anything that you felt like you just couldn't include and that you threw out that you were originally working on?
Well, there were some things that went through quite a bit of revision. one of the things that didn't get included was any talk of Christianity or any connections to Christianity. And that's been a big area of investigation. And one, I just kind of felt like a lot of that stuff had been done. And I personally skeptical of quite a bit of it. So it wasn't something that I felt I needed to include because I felt a lot of people had already sort of gone that direction and developed whole books just making these connections. And so I decided that I wasn't particularly interested in kind of including that. I don't discourage anybody from investigating that. There may be some valuable lines of inquiry there. It just wasn't the direction that I wanted to take the book. And there were also some people that really didn't want the more speculative kind of chapters to be included. So the chapters vary a lot. Some are very fact-based and developed around fact. Others require a little bit kind of more interpretation. And of course, when we're looking at historical cultures and potential historical practices, you're almost never gonna be able to say anything to a 100% degree. But the chapters that got included were all the ones that I felt had interesting areas of investigation, and the authors were asking interesting questions. And one of the other areas too is that some of the stuff, the folklore and the mythology itself is just so fascinating that I kind of feel like, even if none of the connections are real, just learning and reading that folklore and mythology is just so inherently fascinating that I feel that people should be just exposed to it, because there's so many great stories that people just don't know anymore. So I felt there was another benefit there, that let's read our Nordic mythology, and let's read our Celtic mythology, and relearn who some of these heroes were, and so I just think there was a lot of great content there.
There are 16 chapters on that in that section. So any of you that like the history and the lore and all the archaeology, all that stuff, the stories, you have 16 freaking chapters to read on that. And the first one I'm going to read is on the Berserkers. I want to see what they had to say about that. Hoffman and Ruck. I want to see what they had to say about it. Was there anything that you were worried about publishing and dealing with?
Well, so the last chapter, I was a little worried about the formula. And so that's one of the reasons why I kind of framed things in terms of, kind of historical and cultural recipes, is that I wanted to maintain a little bit of a distance from just kind of straight up, kind of recipes, and wanted to offer that cultural and historical context, and really kind of develop that up a little bit and show, okay, this is what people have done, and also kind of bring in those different cultural mythologies, but also be able to address kind of the pharmacology at the same time, to really explore, like, okay, so this is what they did in Siberia, and from a pharmacological standpoint, this is why we know it works this way. And that even though, they didn't know the chemistry of it, they're handling the mushroom and they're preparing it in a way that demonstrates a lot of understanding and knowledge about, the substance they're handling. So I really kind of wanted to emphasize that aspect of it, and not get drawn into something that might be seen as more of a drug focused sort of chapter.
Yeah.
And really kind of focus on culture and history.
I should learn from you. My life would be easier. I always like to send people in different directions because I'm like the networking person, that's what I want my channel to be. So
Right.
for you, I want to tell you to go find the Psychedelic Historian if you don't
Mhm.
know about him. And his work is amazing. He's a scholar, a historian, and he's got all the letters after his name. He's got a lot of books, and he's
Mhm.
got a lot on this mushroom. And I was on his show, but he's doing a lot of debunking. And it would be
Okay.
interesting to see the two of you on the same screen
Yeah.
talking. That's a conversation I want the two of you to have. So please look him up, and I'm going to tell him to look you up. And I hope the
Okay.
two of you sit down together. And then for people watching this, if you really want to get into some of the most recent research on decarboxylation, look on YouTube for the round table, the Agaric round table. And it's several authors from this book, and they're talking about really new cutting edge stuff. Totally fascinating. And then, if any of you want to hear a really cool high level interview with him about this book and some really cool science stuff, go to, was it the Mushroom Hour that you were on?
Yeah, the
And
mushroom hour.
man, that interview, it's hard for me to listen to an interview all the way through. Like, I want it to be really not entertaining, but actually educational. And that blew me away. I mean, y'all kept me on the edge of my seat with the high level stuff that y'all were getting into on the science of this. So if either any of those things sounds interesting to y'all, now you know where to go to get it. So I want to wrap this up by asking you, what do you want to say about the book? What do you wish that if you could just go off script or say anything you wanted to say and you didn't have to answer any questions, what is it you want to say about the book?
Oh man, that's a really good question. Um, well, I hope people will read it and enjoy it. One of the reasons, I said before, one of the reasons I wrote it was this is kind of the book I always wanted. But another reason is because there is a lot of misinformation out there and a lot of people arguing uh, back and forth with misinformation on both sides. And I think that I think there's a lot to learn about this mushroom and a lot to explore about it. And so my hope is, hopefully this can help elevate the conversation a little bit. Maybe we can uh, jump over those mud puddles of misinformation and continue on the journey together and learning with this mushroom. And so that's kind of my hope for it, that people will enjoy it and also be able to take away some personal benefit in their own lives or their own practices.
So where can they find you online, and where can they get the book?
Well, the book is available at online booksellers. So, Amazon's not my hero or my favorite, but it is there. It's at Barnes and Noble. It will soon be carried on Peter McCoy's website, Radical Mycology. So if people want to support, small business, it should be available at the Radical Mycology website in the next couple of weeks. So those are all places you can look.
What about you? If they want to look you up and find you, do you have a website?
I don't have a website. There is a Facebook page for Agaric Press, which is the publisher of the book. Looking into building a website at the moment, but nothing as of now.
But if
So
they message
currently,
you on Agaric Press on Facebook, can they ask you a question or?
yes. So people can message me through that Facebook page for Agaric Press.
All right, cool. Y'all, if you, most of the questions y'all bother me about that you think I didn't answer well, I'm not going to say I answered them right. I'm going to say, if you don't think I did, then this is where you need to go, because this is where I go to get my information. I really appreciate you like actually giving me your time like this. I'm starstruck, and thank you.
Nope,
I am in
it's been a
awe.
It's been a wonderful conversation. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Will you come back?
Yeah.
All right, y'all, that's the end of this video. If you think that it has been entertaining and interesting, buy me a coffee, support the channel. You know where to find me. Look in the description. I love you, beautiful people. Bye.